Now, in a strong statement that has been made by the former President of America, Donald Trump, he has said that if he was the President of United States of America at this time, he would ensure that the state of the Hindu Bangladeshis would have not been as bad as it is under the presidency of Joe Biden. Now, there has been a gradual tilt that is being seen for the Indian Americans who traditionally voted and supported the Democrats and now swiftly moving across the spectrum and looking at Republicans as a viable option to vote for. There have been a large number of Indian Americans who have joined politics in the recent past, and they all have been in the camp of the Republicans. We are talking about Vivek Ramaswamy, we are talking about Bobby Jindal, who has gradually changed his stance and been very anti-Democrats and very anti-Harris when it comes to the immigration policy being followed by the Democrats. We of course have Nikki Haley, who had this fierce fight between President Trump, former President Trump, vying for the position of the Republican presidential candidate. So here are all these developments that have taken place, and let's start our conversation to understand why the Indian American vote is so important, extremely crucial, and why is it that the Republicans and the Democrats are vying for this vote. Joining me on the telecast is Dr. Lavanya Vemsani. She is the author of the Board of the Trustees, Distinguished Professor of History in Department of Social Sciences. She works at the Shawnee State University in United States. Dr. Lavanya Vemsani, how do you analyze, if poll projections are to be believed, that there are more and more Indian Americans who are shifting their loyalties to the Republicans?
Right. The polls are to be believed, I think, because it's changing day by day. So Trump, I think, is projected to win, but it's still close race, so we cannot really say. But the shifting is happening. Republicans are favored to win. So in view of that, Trump's views are very strong, sends a strong message. And I think this is actually a signal of geopolitical change happening in the subcontinent. This signals, and this bodes well for India. India is poised strongly and also in a good position. And if you look at Trump history, his foreign relations history and his relations with India in his past presidential term, they were very favorable. Trump and Modi hosted an event in US and event in India. That is one, favorable relations, that's for sure. But Trump is the most anti-racist, anti-Hindu elements are increasing in India. But Trump has shown that he stands against this anti-Hindu rhetoric and anti-Hindu crimes that are developing in India. Of course, there is increase in anti-Hindu incidents in US. There is 65% increase. That was not tracked by us. That was actually tracked by the American administration. So there is an increase in anti-Hindu incidents in US.
Right.
And also similarly, the anti-India stand keeps on growing in the last 4 years.
Okay.
So if you look at Trump history and if you look at what Trump said today, this actually bodes well for India, and this also signals change in geopolitical scenario there.
Right, absolutely. Also on the telecast with me is Ambassador Veena Sikri. Ambassador Sikri, particularly let's focus on this one specific statement that has been made by Donald Trump, which has made it quite obvious the way Republicans and President Trump, if he were to come to power, is going to look at India and look at the Hindu legacy in America and across the globe, and how his foreign policy is going to be vis-a-vis Hindus and Indians?
Well, I think the statement by President Trump is very significant. I agree with what our colleague has said on the panel that the Republican Party is gaining strength. Of course, we have to wait for the actual voting on Tuesday, but the Republican Party is gaining strength. So in that light, the statement by President Trump makes a lot of sense. There are 3 points in the statement I think that need to be highlighted. First of all, I think, of course, the increasing importance of the Indian American vote. 5.2 million strong Indian American community, and their vote really counts. And they are being wooed by both sides to give their vote either to the Republicans or Democrats. Historically, the Indian American community has been strongly Democratic. And this time, the poll surveys show that the number of Indian Americans favoring the Republican Party has been going up. Whether it is going to cross a significant proportion of the 50% mark is not yet known, but certainly there has been significant increase of 10% and more in the number of the Indian American community wanting to vote for the Republicans. So this is very significant, and President Trump is obviously wooing this community to make them come up strongly. The second point, I think, is the focus that the former president of the USA, President Trump, has given to the anti-Hindu rhetoric in the USA, particularly highlighting the radical left as being the source of this anti-Hindu rhetoric. So I think this is a very important point. It was something that we have all been talking about in India a great deal, and we've been remarking how this is being allowed to continue unchecked. And President Trump highlighting this very significant anti-Hindu rhetoric, the increasing anti-Hindu rhetoric, particularly by the radical left, is very important. And thirdly, I think the very fact that President Trump has mentioned Bangladesh, I think this is a very significant factor, because I think this is probably the first time that former President Trump, is mentioning the events in Bangladesh which have taken place from August 5th of this year onwards, when former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was forced to leave the country, even though she hasn't resigned, but she was forced to leave the country. So I think what he has said about the attacks on the Hindus, Christians, Buddhists and other minority communities in Bangladesh is very important. He's highlighting this. He's calling it absolutely a terrible event. He's calling the state of existence in Bangladesh as chaotic. The state of events is chaotic. So I think we have to take that in fact in his support for the Hindu community, for the Indian Americans. He's including the events in Bangladesh, and he's calling them out, and he's saying they're absolutely not acceptable that this should happen like that.
Right.
For all 3 reasons, the statement is very significant.
Right, absolutely. But the White House in its statements in the past has not once mentioned and spoken particularly about the atrocities that Hindus have had to face in wake of the Sheikh Hasina government being ousted, and she has been now sent on in exile. How does this reflect India and United States relations if the Democrats were to come to power versus if it was Donald Trump who became the president?
Well, if the Democrats come back to power, then it will be chaos, unimaginable. Because whether it is what is happening in Bangladesh or what is happening in the Eastern European theater of the conflict, everything is going to go up manifold. Look, Bangladesh regime change is a pet project of a section of, I am saying it, of the US administration. Because Mohammad Yunus goes to United States and he talks about how it was planned and who did it. He talked about it. Look at the kind of persecution that is happening. There is not a single statement from White House or the US State Department on this. You have a Nobel Peace Prize winner, who has literally been, para-dropped into Bangladesh to head a government, and there has been systematic persecution which is happening. There is systematic impoverishment which is happening, and the White House remains absolutely oblivious to all of it. In fact, US administrations for a long time have been completely oblivious to the plight of the Hindus. It is not something new. I think Trump is an exception to that. Trump has for the first time mentioned, in spite of the fact that Hindus have been one of the biggest contributors to the American economy. One cannot deny that. So if Trump comes back to power, then all these regime change games we generally see during the Democrat era I think there will be a certain amount of containment of that. In case of Bangladesh, what happens we don't know, but Bangladesh is getting into a bigger chaos, and it would have a tremendous impact on India as well. What
Right.
is the legitimacy of the Bangladesh government? Well, it is for the people of Bangladesh to decide. But if the American White House and State Department and USICRF has a tendency to poke nose into everything, then they must be asked that why is USICRF so much silent about what is happening in Bangladesh? They never speak about not just that. They never speak about the persecution of minorities in Pakistan. On the contrary, when India brought out the Citizenship Amendment Act to give a little bit of relief to the persecuted minorities of Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, the US government and their ambassadors in India made very critical comments on that.
Okay.
So there is a
Okay.
double standard which is getting exposed. We think if Trump comes back to power, it might help.
Okay,
At least
all
a
right.
certain.
I have with me Dr. Sampath Shivangi as well. Dr. Shivangi, what's happening with the Indian American vote? Is there a perception change? Because take a look at the 2020 elections and now 2024. There seem to be more and more Indian Americans who are now suddenly favoring the Republicans. They're all traditional voters of the Democrats. So what do you think is causing this shift?
Can't hear. Unmute.
Kamala Harris is not much in favor of India at all. First of all, she says she is not Indian. Of course, that I agree. But she definitely has Indian heritage. Her mother is Indian. Her grandfather, who is very close to her, who was ICS officer in New Delhi, he is very close to her till today. But she doesn't want to identify. She has her own reason, because if she says she is Indian American or Indian heritage, the black Americans will not support her at all. I know it happened to me personally. When I wrote something about Kamala Harris, they called me and they abused me on the phone. I said, how can you say she's not a black American? I am anti-American. I was blamed. They physically called me and threatened me. So I see me going same thing. See, suppose she says Indian American, she will get maybe 1 to 2% of US votes. But if she says she's African American or black American, she is going to get 18 to 20% votes. 14 to 16 African American in US and the neighboring countries like Jamaica, Puerto Rico, all who have African American descent will definitely vote for her. Why would she lose 20%
Okay.
votes?
Okay.
And I'm following her for the last 6 years. When she was a US Senator, I questioned her because she was not even able to identify, and she was not much in favor of India because she went against 370 Indian parliamentary decision, and she was against anything happening in Kashmir. It is a very, very touchy story with Indian Americans in the US. They won't accept it. So things are changing. Earlier, she had a big number of votes, but Indian Americans, I see, because I am very much involved in the US politics for the last 45 years. I am the only Indian American who is a delegate at the US Republican Convention in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin.
Right.
In the month
So
of
then, okay,
September.
Dr. Sampath Shivangi, again, an interesting question over here. Do you think if Kamala Harris was not the face of the Democrats in this race for the US presidential elections and there was somebody else who was standing in her place, the Indian American vote may stay with the Democrats even now? Or is it more because of the ideology of the Democrats is what the Indian Americans at this point in time are finding themselves to be distanced against?
Definitely. See, the India sensitive issue will bother any Indian American. They are more patriotic than you can think of. I think they're more patriotic than many Indians in India. I can tell you that, including me. The people are very sensitive, and the way she is denying anything to do with India, it bothers them, it hurts them.
Okay.
So she may lose some Indian votes compared to any other presidential candidate.
Okay.
I'm sure about
Okay.
that.
Okay. All right. Coming back to you, Ambassador Sikri, now, how do India-America ties? How do you envisage them? How do you view them in the future? Both scenarios, Democrats. If the Democrats were to come to power, or was it the Republicans that would then hold the position of the president in United States of America? Do you think it is going to have, a larger significant impact on how our trade ties are or diplomatic ties are?
Well, I think that certainly we have to judge by what has happened in the immediate past 4 years under President Biden's presidency. And we've seen here, a strange combination where on the one hand, the India-American ties have been developing. I mean, just look at one initiative, the initiative on critical emerging technologies, the initiative on the GE engine to be supplied by America for the Indian fighter aircraft. Those decisions are there, those progresses are being made. But we've seen a strange tendency to really, for absolutely no reason and completely unacceptably, name India in cases in New York to talk about, the Panun and the case against him, to support Canada on what they're saying about Nijar, and all kinds of completely unacceptable statements against India that have been made by the Biden administration. And the activities of the deep state in America have been completely unacceptable, and they have been causing a great deal of concern in India about the trustworthiness about the India-American relationship. So this has been a great factor of concern and worry within India. But I think certain Indians are looking forward to the fact that if former President Trump come back to power, that the Indian-American relationship will go ahead on a much more even keel. There will be genuine progress in all areas. And judging by the statement that former President Trump has made, that he said the Hindu phobia of the radical left and how this is being encouraged by so many people. And this kind of thing should end completely. And it's very encouraging that President Trump is calling for an end to these tendencies and saying he will support that.
Right, absolutely. Yes, you made that point.
Remarkable.
You made that point. Okay. I also, let me get in again, Dr. Lavanya Vemsani. Yes, you want to make a point, and particularly with regards to how the results are going to pan out. So, do you think Trump had at one point of time, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Washington, he was in the United States of America, he had hoped that the Prime Minister would meet him, but that meeting did not happen.
Yeah. So if Trump were to be elected, things would definitely change. As my colleagues said, he is the most India-friendly president US has ever seen, and Hindu-friendly president also that Indian Americans have ever seen. And we have experienced. We have all staying here. Hindu Americans have experienced Hindu phobia, and I am one of them. So I can, seeing the history of increasing Hindu phobia in America, I can tell you that any India-friendly, open outlook, Indian-friendly, Hindu-friendly president would change the outlook. And this rhetoric about these crimes and, the Khalistani issue, all that will also change. The outlook is, right now is fully rhetoric and fully mudslinging. It's not really evidence-based. So this type of rhetoric is going to change. And that is going to help India and the Indian Americans here.
Okay, all right. Pathik, quickly, then coming to you again. Do you think issues such as the plight of the Hindus in the subcontinent, particularly in these Islamic nations like whether it is Bangladesh or Pakistan or Afghanistan, do you really think that it is, or do you think it's a distant possibility that Americans are going to shift all their focus and call out Pakistan and call out Afghanistan over the atrocities that are being meted out to Hindus? They have not done so at this point of time. Trump has made that gesture, but this is right ahead of the polls. Obviously, he's at this point of time wanting to get the vote of the Indian American, of the Hindu American. Do you think something substantial will be done if he were to come to power?
Well, we certainly hope. I just want to say one thing in connection with what Ambassador Sikri mentioned. You know, what we witnessed today is this: there is a duality of approach of United States. While the Department of Defense wants defense cooperation, the State Department works completely in opposite to that. So they have an anti-India bias. I think we want a convergence of both, and we want one central American policy towards everyone. If you are concerned about minorities, you cannot be concerned only about minorities in certain places and ignore the minorities of others. Hindus have been one of the most patriotic communities. Wherever they go, they are the most peace-loving, and you can't take them for granted just because they are non-violent. So I think there is a change happening. We hope it happens. But let me tell you, there will be resistance to Trump as well. There is a deep-rooted leftist bias within the American community as well. It's not going to go away so soon. I mean, it's not that from tomorrow onwards, the agents of regime change will stop doing what they did in Bangladesh.
Yeah,
so
okay.
there is a resistance we would face, but it's a positive. America must acknowledge that other countries need to be given their space, and when it comes to minorities, they cannot have one approach towards one kind of religious minorities and have a completely different approach towards the others. Back to you.
Coming back to you, Dr. Sampath Shivangi, before I wrap up this conversation, and I did point this out in the beginning of my conversation with you all, that there have been a considerable number of Indian Americans who are joining politics, and they are joining the Republicans, and more, a very, very significant development that is taking place. Bobby Jindal, who was a very pro-leftist, pro-democrat, has now been looking to turn the tide and want to switch to the Republican Party. So much so that he has very openly criticized the Harris campaign, particularly on the issue of immigration.
Now, I just wanted to bring one more point. 3.5 years ago, when Prime Minister Modi ji came to US, he was in the White House. Naturally, he met President Biden. Then on the side room, he had a special meeting with Mrs. Kamala Harris. And, he invited her. Actually, if I want to use a word, he almost begged her to come to India, and please, you'll have such a national phenomenon welcome in India because of your Indian origin. And she promised him all that afternoon. She never showed up coming to India. She never talked about India. She is not much in favor of India. I just want Indian citizens to know this, because they may think, oh, she is Indian, she will come. Same situation in the US.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.